Welcome to another episode of the 60 Go podcast. My name's Tom Campbell. Great to have your company, joined by Damien Seabolt. We're going to talk about Origin today. Siebes, who was the one guy you thought was snubbed the most from either team?
Geez, mate, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's got to be James Tedesco. And I'm not saying that Dylan Edwards doesn't deserve to be in the side, but personally, I still would have gone with Teddy. I think he's playing better than he has the last couple of years. So he's the incumbent, the captain, the test captain. Just my opinion. That him and Latrell. I think Latrell. I would have gone personally with him. I think he's that type of bloke that you just want in your team.
I think I was very hard on Tedesco last year, but Tedesco's in much better form this year than last year. Like, if you didn't drop him last year, then I struggled to see a reason why he would be dropped this year, new coach. I get that. You're trying to set your own sort of team, but it would be very tough for someone to make an argument to me that James Tedesco is playing worse than last year.
Oh, mate, and I think too, and it's all relative, and I know we spoke about this last year. James Tedesco wasn't at his best, right? I think we will all agree with that. But James Tedesco, not at his best, he was still a 7 out of 10 compared to normal people last year. So, we just expect him to be a 9 out of 10 every week. And to be fair, I think he is a 9 out of 10 at the moment most weeks. So, I don't know. I get Dylan Edwards deserves a crack. But it's State of Origin at selection. They're picking the best 17 blokes available. And if he's not the best fullback, well, he doesn't get picked. But again, Maguire's obviously come in with a plan in place. And I think the writing's on the wall too for Teddy. For as long as Maguire's there, Teddy won't be playing. And the reason I think that is Jake Trbojevic being named captain. I think it's a line in the sand where they can say, okay, but we make some changes. Jake Trbojevic takes over as captain, but he's only holding the job for the 3 games this year until Cleary's back next year, and Cleary's likely going to be their captain for the next 5, 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cleary's 19, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. I don't know what more David Fifita could have done to get a spot. His numbers this year with the ball have been outrageously good as any other year that he's ever had, and he's damaging at his best. And his negative numbers aren't that bad considering how bad the Titans were at the start of the year. So you have to take into account the team that he was playing on and the people that he had around him were atrocious.
Remember, mate, he didn't play at the start of the year. He didn't play the first 6 games when they were atrocious.
Yes, well, the games that he did play when they weren't as good, they've certainly turned a corner in the recent couple of weeks.
Have they?
I think so.
I don't know. They're still not winning.
Well, they.
I know they beat Brisbane on Brisbane are. There's a sniff of about Brisbane just being in a bit of a lull at the moment. I think they've got to get themselves through Origin. A few blokes look a bit tired. They've got this big 6 weeks coming up, so it wouldn't shock me if a couple of teams do beat Brizzy over the next 6 weeks, and then they'll come back home strong, I would have thought.
I think the jury's out on Brisbane to see what you need to tell me what team they're fielding in the finals. Like, do they get Reynolds back? Do they get their players back? And then I think we can sort of reassess Brisbane at that point. But either way, I thought David Fifita was a bit stiff to miss out. The other one for me was Api Koroisau. In a team that's rubbish in the West Tigers, he is so good. He is so good. And his work with the ball out of dummy half, he creates so much space for particularly his middle forwards that Reece Robson could only dream of at this point in his career.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And you know what? I would not have gone with Reece Robson, but I 100% get not going with Api Koroisau. There's 2 sides to footy, defence and attack. And yes, attack, he is outstanding. He creates things. It would be a little bit difficult trying to put a new game plan in place or a model of or a style of footy with someone that's as erratic as Api. So I do sort of get it because he's very ad-lib. He plays off the cuff. You are correct. There's not many better dummy halves in the game that get their forwards going forward better than Appy. But Appy also misses a lot of tackles. So they've gone in with a clear defensive mindset. And I do get it. But again, I'm not sure if Robson was the person I would have gone with. You know who I don't know. I would have still considered Damien Cook. I really would have for how they want to play. They want someone to defend.
The let's talk about who is there and the strategies that are going to be in place. Pat Carrigan did an interview during the week, and he mentioned a lot about keeping the ball in play. And there's no secret that without Tino, Tom Flegler, and Tom Gilbert as well as missing, it's definitely a smaller pack than what Queensland would prefer to be putting out there. So maybe the strategy is a lot of ball in play and trying to fatigue New South Wales out in that regard. And what that strikes to me is I think we could see a lot of Ben Hunt kicking early from dummy
Yeah.
half.
Yeah, I think so. And Cherry Evans' long kicking game is very good as well. So wouldn't shock me one bit if they get on the front foot, kicks corner, chase hard. I like, still on selection, I suppose, but I do actually like Cobbo on the bench. I think it's the only way he was going to get in the side, and he's a good footballer. He can create something. He's a giant, so if he has to play lock for 10 minutes, I'm sure he'll handle it. And yeah, it's one for me that I did like. Jaden Sewer was the selection, and again going back to Fafita, that's the change I would have made, and I would have had another bigger body somewhere, just because there's some giants coming off the bench for New South Wales. But like you said, with the style and the way that they want to play footy, well, I'm sure that they're going to be a lot of ball movement, a lot of tip-ons through the forward. So there'll be little short interchange of passes to try and move those big middles around for New South Wales, and that's the model they're going to go with. And it's a good side. I mean, I can't believe there was that journalist in the press conference the other day that quizzed Slater about why would he pick Jermaine Hopgood? He's just a worker. So I don't know if that person's ever sat down and watched a State of Origin game in the last 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. What's the biggest weakness in Queensland?
If New South Wales get an even percentage of footy, I think our pack is probably and it's not a weakness, but it's the bit that I'm concerned about. So if New South Wales can get 50% or even more, then their big forwards are really going to come into it. So New South Wales have picked a combination of workers, but with a couple of giants. So that's where I can see there being a problem for Queensland. What about yourself? What do you think?
I think the back row will be tested for Queensland. I think that Crichton and Martin are in superb form at the moment, and they punch holes in defensive lines. And I think that Sewer and Nanai are going to have their work cut out for them in that regard. The other one, the edge that Stephen Crichton is defending on is going to be. I wouldn't even go there because he's
the best defensive center, isn't he?
He is so good at the moment, and it's probably taken me a little while to appreciate how good he is. But now that he's out of a Penrith system, which they're all good, and he's just in the Bulldogs, which at the start of the year was rubbish, and now it's finally turned a corner as well. He makes up for so much rubbish around him, and he lifts them to a standard that, because he is so good, they in the Bulldogs, they're a very good defensive side.
Yeah, man, I could not agree more. I think the standards that he puts in place as well are rubbing off on his side, because last night Newcastle are a rabble, and that's probably a chat for another pod. But the standards that he's brought in and obviously holding his teammates accountable for, it's rubbing off. And I think New South Wales, they would just have to get to game day, and whatever side Hammer decides to pop up on, that's where Crichton defends.
Yeah, and I think it will be very hard to penetrate that side.
Do you think he's fallen into the tall poppy syndrome? over the years, the same that Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary, because they play for Penrith, and people just can't handle someone being good, so they like to look at every negative. At the end of the day, those blokes are freaks. Like, they're all outstanding.
I think with Stephen Crichton, when he was first picked for Origin, I do think that was probably too early, which probably caused people to be rightfully overrating him at the time. But now there's no denying he is. If there's a representative team to be picked, he is the first center picked, because he defensively, what he does, you don't even have to talk about attack. Defensively, what he does is elite, and it's one of the best that we've seen in such a long time.
Yeah, he just locks down that edge. I mean, he's like Matt Cooper, but can attack. Remember how Matt Cooper used to lock down an edge?
Yes.
Well, it's true.
Payne Haas as well is the unicorn in this side as well. He is the true go forward guy in this team. Trbojevic and McInnes, you're not going to rely on them for a ton of go forward. Payne Haas is the key to this Blues forward pack, isn't he?
And Haas is what? He'd be into his third or fourth series, and I don't reckon he's dominated an Origin. Maybe it's unfair to say dominated an Origin game, but he certainly hasn't dominated a series yet, and he needs to have a cracker.
There's been a couple of games with Payne Haas that he has been ridiculously good in State of Origin. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. Queensland won, and he was just everywhere. Like if Queensland scored a try, he was the last person in the frame for New South Wales.
Yeah, his work rate was huge.
His effort could not be questioned. So he's going to be very good. Also for New South Wales, their back five is going to bring the ball out tremendously well. So that will make up a lot for the lack of go forward in the forward pack.
100%. And look, you know what? The weakness is, I think, I like Nico. I think he's a good footballer, but especially after Thursday night, do you think that Maguire was sitting there in the back of his mind? Oh, why couldn't have Moses come back a week earlier? Moses is a better footballer than Nico.
If Moses does that last week,
he's
the halfback for New South Wales.
I agree,
and I think
that's the weakness for New South Wales is the halves. Well, not the halves, because I rate Luai, but I think Nico is unproven still at that level or in a big game. So you can't tell me that we're not going to be sending that much traffic at him, trying to bash him, get in his head, rush him. And that's, their kicking game is going to struggle.
And there's two facts that I want to point out about Nico, and it's not a bag session because I love Nico, but that game the other night against Penrith, they got blown out of the water, and that was very Origin style in the fact that Cronulla were on the back foot a lot, and he wasn't really able to do anything to change it. There was nothing.
But he only played about 15, 20 minutes, so
I get that, but they were under the pump from the start. And the other thing as well, his club coach, one of his club coaches, is now with Queensland. So any little tips and tricks that Hane's got to disrupt Nico, he's going to pull out of the bag.
And I don't think it's too hard to work out. Like, send traffic at him, because defensively, he's not elite. Like, he's okay defensively, but he's not elite. And inside pressure on his kicks, it's that's when he comes unstuck, because he does shank the odd one into touch, and it's normally when that inside pressure is coming from marker or the A or B defender to really rush him and rattle him up a little bit. And I think with the quality of players that Queensland have got in the outside backs, they're not going to make the mistakes of leaving space for him then to take off and run. So you notice a lot of time on fifth tackles, he runs a lot, and it's normally because teams are trying to put that pressure on him from the inside, but then there becomes space, and it creates space on the outside. And Nico's running game is elite, so he takes off.
And Josh Hannay told us on this podcast last year he had a plan ready to go for Nico if he was going to be picked with Cody Walker in the halves for game 3, but they ended up going with Moses. So he had a plan ready to go. So there's no love lost when it comes to Origin. Like, these guys are ready to do everything it takes to win. So it's going to be exciting. There's no doubt about that. But I do think the pressure is there now on Nico to perform. How can it not be with Moses coming back and looking so good? Moses has done it at Origin before. He's played Origin and won before, so it's going to be really interesting to see the pressure on Nico throughout these couple of weeks.
The team that New South Wales picked look like it is purely a eat the meters up. Let's get through our sets and see if Queensland blink first. Because my concern with Queensland is, obviously we could argue, we talk about whether Fifita should have been in or not. Well, Sua's a better defender. We could argue other things like, is Cobbo the right choice? Should we have had another big unit? All that aside, the back five for Queensland this season, the errors that those blokes have dished up are through the roof. So, again, every single one of them can win a game and win an Origin on their own in the space of 15 minutes. But there's going to be errors there. And to me, it looks like New South Wales know that. Let's just get through our sets, eat meters up, wait for them to make mistakes, which are going to come, and then grind them down that way. That's my concern, and that's where I think they'll put a lot of pressure on us.
Seems, give me a tip and a man of the match.
Queensland by 2, and let's go with, I think, Ruben Cotter. He'll work his backside off. But again, game 1 in Sydney, it wouldn't shock me if it's an 8-6, 10-8 type of game. New South Wales could sneak home. You?
Yeah, I'll go Queensland by 4. I think Ben Hunt man of the match. I think he's going to be instrumental to Queensland's chances, particularly his kicking game out of dummy half. But
just on that, how much longer are we going to go with two hookers for? Because that's where, if you're carrying Cobbo on the bench, that's where I think the bigger body could have come in and should have come in. Like, I don't know how much longer. I know it works, but yeah, that for me is the thing to look at soon.
Naturally, there's no replacement for Hunt at the moment. Like, there's no next guy to come in. Like, I don't think Dearden can play that role yet. I don't think Mam can play that role yet. Mam's probably the closest one to Hunt if you're going to go with that sort of person. But I just think
no, okay, mate, no, not yet. He's missed 22. And if anyone wants to know why Dearden got picked over him, in the last 3 games, Mam's missed more tackles than Dearden's missed all year. And that's that's an actual a factual stat, not one that I've made up. But
I get that, and I'm not talking about playing halves. I think I'm very happy Dearden got picked in the halves, but I'm just saying, if you're looking for a Ben Hunt clone down the road, I think it's probably more likely to be Mam. But I don't think that they'll go that way. I think Harry Grant will be the full-time hooker, and then that'll be it when Ben Hunt hangs it up. But I'm very curious to see how they go with this Cobbo selection. I actually love it. I think it's
I think
for the sake of playing, Brendan Piakora for 15 minutes. No, let's have cover.
The concern will be, and look, hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's Origin, collisions are enormous. We're in trouble if a middle goes down early.
Absolutely. And there'll be some big minutes required out of people like Carrigan, Collins, and Cotter. But it'll be interesting to see, and we'll do a debrief after the game. This has been the 60O podcast, and that is full time.